Welcome, everyone. I'd like to start by welcoming everyone to this roundtable discussion. I understand that we've got a mix of undergraduate, postgraduate, and also postdoc and assistant professor faculty members here today joining us. So maybe I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Stephanie Ma. I'm an associate professor in the School of Biomedical Sciences, Faculty of Medicine at the University of Hong Kong. I'm also a vice president of the Hong Kong Young Academy of Sciences. And of course, beside me is Professor Alice Wong. Alice Wong is a director and also a professor in the School of Biological Sciences in the Faculty of Science at the University of Hong Kong. She's also the Associate Vice President of Research at the University of Hong Kong. So we're both cancer biologists, and but we're open to answer any questions that you may have. So I guess I'll just invite, for a casual conversation. So when you speak, please, try to introduce yourself, tell me your name, and tell us what discipline you are from.
Maybe I can go first.
Yes, please.
So my name is Ennis. I'm a final year PhD student in the School of Optometry in the PonyU. So my research focuses on myopia research. So we have animal models and we find drugs that can slow down myopia progressions, like in chick model, like in mice model. And we use a technology called proteomics using mass spectrometry to find protein in the retina. So to tackle the signal processing in the myopia progressions. So honored to meet two of the well-known cancer cell biologists here. So the questions I want to ask is, because there are recent development of the gene therapy showing, promising results in the patients. So whether you think the gene therapy or protein therapeutics is the future and which may benefit the most?
You mean compare either gene therapy
Yes.
or the protein level,
Yes.
right? I think both have advantages and also limitations currently. So we have to, for both of them, there are also research ongoing to modify and bypass those limitations. So I think they are equally good in a way. Once, if we could bypass all these limitations, for example, the specific targeting, and which is a way to enhance efficacy and also decrease the side effects.
I'm Crystal. I'm from PolyU and I studied radiography from the Department of Health Technology and Informatics. And my research interest is about cell-to-cell communication. I have been in a molecular biology lab for 3.5 years in my bachelor degree doing my research project on endothelin and HNS cancer. And I'm particularly interested in endothelins and its receptor interaction and also cell transduction such as Hippo pathway, which relates to F18 leading to some metastasis or cytoskeletal remodeling. And I'm very happy to join this activity because I also joined the activity last year with Professor Dennis Low, which is a very happy event for me. And my question is that I heard from Professor Wong that one of the limitations for cancer research is tumor heterogeneity, which I was also very impressed because just like tumors have different kinds of tumors, they have different gene expression, they have different biomarkers, different characteristics. When we are doing research, we focus on one particular pathway. But it doesn't mean the same to other cancer or the other tumors. So how do you solve the problem or overcome this limitation when designing your experiments or writing the grant for the research? The strategy.
Yeah, I think we started getting to know, as you mentioned, there are intra-tumor heterogeneity in terms of cell type. Also, they might carry different genetic signatures. So I think once we know that, in our experimental design, that we could specifically address it. For example, within the tumor itself, there are techniques like the single cell RNA-seq, which and also spatial kind of imaging nowadays is you can look more precisely the different gene or protein expressions of different cells in the tumor. In terms of understanding its interaction with a specific cell type with the tumor microenvironment, for example, either the fibroblasts or the mesothelial cells that I talk about, or the immune cells, you can do co-culture. It will be easy to do it in a cell culture setting to dissect this mechanism, but eventually everything would have to go in vivo, using in vivo models to better mimic the whole situation for a better understanding. I think Stephanie also might have some input on this part.
Thank you, Alice. I think the fun part of science is that there's always new tools to play with, new technologies that come around and will enable us to use these new techniques to address a problem that previously was not possible. So as Alice said, we've got single-cell transcriptome sequencing or single-cell, any kind of sequencing of many sorts, which has enabled us to really look at heterogeneity. And I think back 5-6 years ago, that wasn't even possible, right? And so we really, as researchers, really have to keep updated with the latest technology and think about how to utilize these technologies to address maybe the same question, but we'll have very different findings. So I think that's the fun part of it.
Yes, I completely think just like cloning in the 20th century is impossible, cell cloning, but now we can do cloning in the lab very easily, and it is a very common tool to us.
That's right.
Yes, the field has changed.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Wong and Dr. Ma, for the impressive talk and your time today. So my name is Iris, and I'm a second-year PhD student from the Department of Medicine and Therapeutics at UHK. And my research focuses on the role of gut microbiota in post-acute COVID-19 syndrome, or otherwise known as long COVID. And so my question is quite simple, is that what is the next big question in your research or field that you can inspire us?
For me, maybe I'll go first. Okay. For me, I guess just personally, in recent years, I have been exposed a little bit more to translational research. I mean, that's always been at the back of my mind, and that's always been an ultimate goal of a lot of cancer researchers, right? But in the past, I think in the academic field, a lot of us will focus on basic research, which is very, very important, I must say, right? But I guess for me at this career stage, I'm starting to think about how really my basic research innovations in the lab can be really pushed into translational research. And we can publish papers, we can get our grants, we can nurture our students, but really how will this knowledge be able to benefit patients, which is really our ultimate goal. So in recent years, this has always been not troubling, but really I find that challenging, but I think it's a good challenge because it really pushed myself out of a comfort zone. So I guess back to your question is, what is the next thing that I would want to do or break out of is really my comfort zone and see and think really from an entrepreneurship mindset a little bit more than really a basic scientist to see how we can blend things and really translate a little bit of what I do in the lab, hopefully to benefit patients. So
next big question is I want to even be more creative in addressing the current clinical question, because I do cancer metastases. Instead of just seeing or looking at just the tumor and the tumor microenvironment, I'm more thinking of something outside, the current picture that might be important. So we are trying to even be more creative and innovative in answering that, and also collaborations with different disciplines. So in my talk, I also talk a little bit about with engineering earlier, currently with also chemistry, chemical biologists, as well as data scientists. So we are hoping that we'll be able to use a very different angle to address maybe the same question, but hoping that with that we will get a bigger impact.
Yeah, thank you. So translational research is really important with some innovative components, creative components, and now I think Hong Kong is really moving on to the next stage of developing more innovative centers to allow more interdisciplinary collaboration, which is really good. Okay.
Hello, I'm Billy Ng. I'm an assistant professor from the School of Pharmacy from CUHK. So my research interest is small molecule drug discovery. So in particular, I'm interested in small molecule for the treatment of cancer and also neurodegenerative disease. So I have a question which is not that related to science, because as a junior PI, I feel like I'm lacking the expertise in lab management and lab leadership, because during our postdoctoral or PhD training, we are not trained as a manager or leader. We are trained as a hardcore scientist to excel in the experiment and writing manuscript. So I wonder, what's your view on like lab management and lab leadership in general?
I'm not sure I'm a good leader in the lab, but often I see my team as we are pretty much equal. So I'm just maybe a little bit more knowledgeable on the topic than they do. So we work together. So we discuss, we sort of, it still feel like I'm a postdoc, a senior postdoc in the lab that we work together. But of course, you need some direction. So I guess the only important thing is we have to set direction. So as a junior PI, I keep telling like colleagues that they have to be focused. So cannot be too diverse in what they are doing, because you might not have the manpower and also the resources to do it. So if you mention like your focus is on the small molecule, then just focus on that and not getting too diluted with different things that you are doing. And then you can have different students have their own topic revolving like around a specific theme, but together you have one big focus on the topic.
I agree with Alice. I think as a more junior PI, I mean, to make tenure, I think being focused in your unique field and showing independence is very important. Whether you acquire, I mean, I think you will learn that at different stage in your career, you will have to acquire different skill sets. So, for example, as a postdoc, you may still be very much, doing research. That's all, right? And maybe assisting your mentor to write some grants. But as a PI, then you have to find funding, you have to supervise students, and then you have to balance all this time. And you also have to spend time in the lab, right? Guiding your students, right? With a small team. So you have to find time to balance all this out. But then when you start moving up, then you also have other duties, like teaching, administrative, or even science education, right? Or just outside the community. So I think it's a balance of, I think these skill sets will come when it's needed. And I think I agree with Alice saying that teamwork is very important. I think within my own team, I also depend a lot on them to help run my lab. It's not really me just leading them, but it's also sometimes I also learn from them. And I think.
Thank you, Professor Alice and Dr. Ma, for very, inspiring topic today. I'm a year one postdoc from CTU Department of Biomedical Sciences. And my research field is cardiovascular research, specialist on cell therapy. So I come here with a question in mind, could you please share some inspiring stories or the point of view that you always use to overcome the difficulty when you pursue science?
Yeah, everyone tells you to be persistent, right? In science or in research, experiments not working are quite common. Well, as I said, my PhD mentor, Nelly, she's good. So she's the one who will stay late in the lab and talking to us. So she's a model. Alternatively, a lot of the times when I think of the cancer patients, that sort of give me, the persistence to stay on, the perseverance, just to continue what I'm doing.
For me, I think I had to think really hard for this question because at different stages, there are different things that really got me continue to go. For example, I remember vividly when I was still a postdoc, I attended a conference in the US. It was the American Association for Cancer Research annual meeting. It's the biggest basic oncology meeting in the US or in the world. And all I had was just a poster. I didn't even have a talk or anything. It was just a poster presentation. And supposedly you're supposed to stand beside your poster for a few hours, for people to come ask questions. And I remember there was, and usually these would be basic researchers, postgrad students or whatever to come around. But I was very surprised when I was actually approached by a patient. And at that time I was actually working on, I had a poster on prostate cancer actually. And he came up and told me he's actually a patient that is suffering from prostate cancer and thanked me for my research work, which I still remember today, what he looks like. And I was actually very surprised that, because not only was I surprised that I would be approached by a patient at such a meeting, but really that what I do is actually meaningful to someone out there, right? Although, you might think you're just, publishing a paper or whatever, but even a small incremental knowledge in what you do may be somehow impactful in other people's lives. So that, I think, has always been, something that I have held, or remembered. And I think nowadays, when I am sort of mentoring my own students, I think I really find joy and satisfaction in seeing them do well, right? So it's not only about yourself, right? This is about, growing your passion or distributing your passion to also the younger ones, and hopefully they can also glow and grow up and become successful. And I find a lot of satisfaction in that as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
So maybe introduce myself. So I'm Peter. I'm from Department of Physics in City University of Hong Kong. So there will be little or no relations between life science and physics, but my current future research of interest will be focusing on biomedical imaging. So, but there will be a general topic for this term, but I'm confused before I choosing specific topics in these regions or aspects. So maybe I ask both of you about some criteria before taking the choice in PhD or master degrees.
I would say go with your interests. I mean, that's the first most important thing. So if that's what you are interested in, then just go ahead. In terms of the specific techniques or the topic that or the focus that you might be at, it will just evolve with time. So because as your project goes, and these days new technologies come up much faster than before. So we have been learning new things. And I think also if you are working on a different discipline, you are also seeing things from a different angle. So that's good. And then with collaboration, I think it will help you, the project, and also as a team, that it will be a fruitful one. Yeah.
Clarify that you're trying to decide what to go into for your postgraduate program.
Based on the biomedical imaging.
And you're a fresh graduate?
I'm the last year student.
Okay, so have you actually tried working in different labs or in different areas of research?
Yeah, currently I work with University of Taiwan that we're focusing on the neuroimaging, which is related to some kind of disease. So that would be my decided directions of the research, but I'm not sure about it.
So, I mean, I think my suggestion, I don't know, it's not really, it's just, I guess, also speaking from my personal experiences, I find that trying out different things before jumping into a PhD would be a good idea. So when I came back from Canada after my master's degree, I actually worked in 2 different labs as a RA. So 1 year each in different discipline, not even related to cancer. And really, PhD is a very big commitment, right? You spend years on that very specialized topic, right? And for me, I thought, it's very important for me to find a research topic that I'm really passionate about. So I wanted to explore things that, maybe I thought I may like or not like. And I think you only know when you try that topic. So I guess another approach would be also to not be afraid of losing time, but also just to maybe work as an RA first in different fields and see find really what you like and then go into your PhD. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Wong and Dr. Ma, for sharing your experience on the cancer research. My name is Jamie Chung. I'm from the Department of Medicine and Therapeutics from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So my research interest is on the fatty liver in type 2 diabetes patient. So my questions are more general because I'm in my final year PhD. So my question is, how do you look for your research interests? Because most research is data-driven. And how do you keep passionate on it? And how do you plan your early career?
So for me, when my PhD is actually on cancer research. And initially, and then at that time, I know cell adhesion molecules. So I have been looking, I have applied a few labs, mainly based on signal transduction and on different model system. But at the end, I decided to go to a lab. In fact, he's a developmental biologist. Because I think in developmental biology, there's a lot of things that can tell us or I can learn if I do cancer research. And it's a field that I haven't been worked on before. And that's how I decided to go in there. But it happened that he has a grant on cancer as well. So in part, at that time is to do with, because the invasive and the migratory behavior has a lot of processes, morphogenesis happen in development actually is similar to what's in cancer. So I've been working mostly on the cancer part, but I've seen all the other model systems, including the mostly the xenopus. About the acids formation at that time, which I see and learn from the other members in the lab. So I think after your PhD, you probably would have some idea about what other topics you like, and or as earlier was Stephanie mentioned, you might also try to go into a new area as well. Usually say is go to do what you like and what you are passionate about, because that's how, when you have difficulties when experiments doesn't work, it helps you to go through, pass those days, and probably will get you excel in the area. Yeah.
I actually don't have much to. I don't know. It's also another hard question. I don't think there was really actually much planning for me in any path. I really just followed what I wanted to do, and I tried different things. And cancer was just something that I could relate to the most, right? So I mean, I don't even know if I even planned a career out of this. We just sort of went along with the flow, and doors just naturally opened. And if you work hard and really like what you do, it's kind of cheesy, but it is what it is.
Maybe I can add a little bit more. At that time, it's not after my PhD, but after my postdoc, because I'm in the US, so you can either go academic or go industry. So there's lots of industry there, a little bit unlike Hong Kong. So at that time, I do have to decide between if I want to go academic or industry. And finally, as you can see, I chose academics, even though I have a harder life. As compared to most of the people working the pharmaceuticals in the big pharma in the US. But I want to be able to work on topics I like, ask the questions I want to. So that's also something that you might consider. And in Hong Kong now, the environment has a lot more opportunities now. So it's not just academic. So there is some biotech industry, and also you can be an entrepreneur too, starting your own company as well. Yeah.
I think you guys are in a very a nice generation, being that I think back when Niles and I graduated, I think the only route if you want to stay in Hong Kong and to pursue science is really in the academic field. But now, there's so much support, from different areas, and Science Park, Greater Bay Area, entrepreneurship, innovation and tech, it's all blooming. So there's a lot more choices for graduates now than before.
And Professor Wong and Dr. Ma, I know you two had overseas experience, PhD student or master students. So as a local student, I'm actually curious whether overseas exposure is really important to a PhD student. And how different is the academic atmosphere between Hong Kong and Canada, for example?
Not much difference now. You know, I used to advise my students that if you like for projects that they want or they want to continue further studies, they can consider going abroad. But now, for quite a number of years, I've been saying that is they can in Hong Kong is also fine, because back to the very like maybe almost 20 years ago, that Hong Kong doesn't have as active research as what it is now. So we have more researchers and very top researchers here in Hong Kong. So I think it's more to do with the topic that you want to work on, whether you already have an expertise in Hong Kong that you want to work with, or the expert is actually outside. So that's why you have to go. So in terms of studying abroad, like for me, it's just because without parents that you have to learn be independent. With the lab, it is getting similar in a way that Hong Kong is also quite internationalized, like in terms of the lab environment. But one thing I do treasure a lot in my study in Canada is they have a different training in Canada as compared to in Hong Kong. You have to do more RPG courses. So in different disciplines. So I've learned go through quite stringent developmental biology to histology classes to reproductive endocrinology. So both undergrad and offer at RPG level. So that get me to quite a broad and knowledge-based training apart from doing the lab. And also they would do lab rotation. So the first year, basically, I have to be rotated in several different labs with different techniques. So that also get me exposed to a bit more as compared to my own project.
For me, I always encourage my students to go abroad and experience a different culture. I think that's very important. I mean, I do agree with Alice in the point that it depends on what field you're in. I mean, if your field of expertise is best in Hong Kong, then why do you need to go abroad to do it, right? But then if not, I mean, I think there's also advantages in going abroad to do your postgrad or your postdoc. I think it will open up horizons, and I guess it will be, there's always different ways of managing a topic or, a different style of managing a lab, etc. And I think learning independence is also, another thing that you might want to gain. So, I think we should always try to challenge ourselves and move out of our comfort zone. Yeah.
So for me, as a final year student, final year PhD student, so I'm graduating very soon. I mean, apart from transitioning from student to maybe postdoc, like staff in the university, to a faculty members, like what have you prepared, to take on that challenge or to that career path, from transitioning from PhD student, graduating, and then becoming one of the faculty members?
So perhaps for me, it was very straightforward because actually when I graduated, there weren't much options. There weren't much options really. But having said that, right? I knew I wanted to stay in science and continue to do research because I really like the lab environment. I really like planning my own experiments and doing whatever I hypothesize. And so it was very natural for me to just go on as a postdoc, and then in Hong Kong, you'll be a research assistant professor and then finding a tenure track position, right? And I think for me, the only thing was really to, if I should stay in Hong Kong to do my postdoc or overseas to do a postdoc. But, there were things that I had to consider. But anyway, I think it was a very natural path. And I think you also seek advice, right, from your mentors, from your supervisors, how to move forward, on these things.
Besides publications, like for example, like competitions or like awards, are those benefits too, or what kind of? Because I know both of you are actually the Cush's awardees. So like, what have you benefited the most from that, and to take on the career
from culture? You mean? Sorry, the question is, what I've benefited from the Culture Award?
Yeah, like the Culture Award, and is that, essential for students who want to go for the academic path?
to get a Quota award? Well, it's always nice to get a Quota award, right? And whether it be a studentship, fellowship, whatever, right? And because I think the Quota family is renowned, right? And they're being awarding, I guess, the very top scientists. And so for me, I was awarded a Quota Innovation Award when I started my tenure track assistant professor position, which helped me tremendously because that amount of money at that career stage was a lot, and it was very flexible money. I could use it for hiring anyone I want at any position or buying any equipment I want. So it was very, more flexible than I guess the conventional RGC or GMRF, etc. So, and it also allowed me to explore just very unconventional projects that probably I wouldn't have been successful with a more, RGC where they would require a little bit more preliminary data. So for me, it was very helpful.
So I think awards it's always good, adding to. So I always encourage my students to get either internal or outside. I still remember when I was a student, I got quite some conference awards at the presentation. So I think that's how you learn to tell others what's your project about. And when I was a PhD student, that also funded my trip because in Canada, I think Hong Kong students are very fortunate that the university support all their conferences, a lot of them twice a year. But in Canada, basically, it's maybe only 1 or 2 throughout the study at that time. So if I could get a conference grant, then that supports my travel to the conferences to talk to the others and also hear more about what's going on in the field. So in my career, with time for my Croucher senior research fellowship, I had it when I was an associate professor, moving during the term being kind of a transition to a professor, so helped me to get time to be off from my teaching and other administrative work to develop some of the model system and for research. With and then recently the RGC one, which is also a very important and prestigious one, that I'm also thankful to the RGC that supporting me for another 5 years to do something innovative. And so I think at different stages, these awards have helped me. Yeah.
Perhaps I can supplement a little bit. Sorry, which just came to mind is that I guess as a student or a postdoc, just try to grasp every opportunity given to you. So whether be it a presentation, you might, like you said, you start off by getting a best poster award or best presentation award, right? But this will add up to your CV and it will also build your confidence, right, in speaking. You never know who's out in the audience and who's actually looking at you and then, making a note of, hey, he presented really well and his story is very interesting. And so, so for me, I think I always tell my students is, just try. Right? You never know. And you never know maybe a few years later, and that is that opportunity that came, because you presented at that conference in particular.
If now you guys are talking about something like PhD and post-PhD, may I ask something for pre-PhD? Because I'm a fresh grad and I'm very interested in research, just like what is mentioned before about joining research lab. And it's recall my memory that when I first time applied for some research lab in my bachelor degree, and I write a very good proposal, I think, and then I was rejected. And then I applied for another one, I was rejected again. I think basically because of the discipline, they are not looking for my discipline. And then when I applied the third lab, and then I talked to the PI, I remember what I said is that I have my proposal and I'm very good at washing beakers. I think I could contribute a lot in your lab. And then finally I joined the lab. And then I started the project and that's why now. The question I have is that now at this stage is that if I would like to look for, searching for a PI that suits me a lot. So what criteria do PI thinks, oh, this guy is good for my PhD, for being my PhD student, or what criteria that I should have to join a particular lab from the perspective of PI?
Well, let me assure you, I'm sure that your PI now did not admit you because he just wanted to, or he or she just wanted you to watch speaker. So I'm sure you're very academically competitive as well. So I guess it depends on your stage, right? So I mean, if you're a bachelor's graduate looking for a postgrad, I think right now a lot of people would put an emphasis on how academically competitive you are, and I think that's just a real fact, right? Like whether you did well in your in your courses, etc., and whether you graduate first class, second class, whatever. But when you start moving up, right? I'm not moving up, but I mean you're doing your master's and your PhD and then finding a postdoc, then they'll be a little bit different, right? Your academic records in your bachelor's degree may be less emphasized on, right? But there'll probably be a little bit more on publications, right? On whether you have attended conference and how well you did on those, right? Or whether you got awards like best presentation awards, etc. But more I think more so is publications or whether you have been contributed not maybe just in your own work, but also in your peers' work as a co-author. So I guess it depends on the stage, right? And I think for you you are looking for a PhD.
Yes.
Right? Don't be discouraged by rejections, because a lot of times it's not because they don't like you or they don't like a proposal, but it's just really because you don't have enough quota. Or someone else actually approached them first and they have filled up their quota for that year, because realistically, we cannot take a lot of students each year, right? So just do not feel discouraged. But I would encourage you to start early to look for a PI. And I think that will increase your chances too.
Yeah, I also recall some memory before. After I was being rejected, I sent email to the PI for the second that I applied.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I understand you're looking for research student helper, which have, in some saying that they have money to do work in lab. And I said, how about if I volunteer in this summer holiday? So I joined it for 2 months, but I left because I find another lab that suits me a lot.
So similarly, I also feel that the way that you are proposing to help to do some work in the lab is showing that you are sincere. And then the attitude, I think, is important. So a lot of the time as a PI, well, of course, we have very limited quota, but sometimes I look at the soft skills or the personality of the student as well. Also, if they really have a passion to do science and make it as a career. So that's also something we are looking at. Yeah.
Normally, I see PhD students, they must spend a lot of time to do experiment and run the project. So as a PI, you think that PhD students should invest time to get more basic knowledge, build a strong background, or to stay more focused to the specific field or their own project. So or they should spend time equally.
I think
for their future success.
I think both. So you, of course, you have to read enough and know enough about your topic. So it also depends on if your topic also requires other knowledge. So if that requires, then it will be equally important. If it doesn't, then of course your primary topic will be your priority. But it's always good to read more and know more about specifically, but also revolving around the topic that you are working on, or even on something different. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I think it's both important. I mean, a lot of projects now, it's multidisciplinary, right? You collaborate with other people. Like as a cancer biologist, I collaborate with clinicians, I collaborate with chemical biologists, I collaborate with bioinformaticians, computational biologists. So if I don't know what's going on in their field, right? I don't have to be an expert in their field, but at least have to know what's going on in order to initiate a collaboration, right? And so I guess it's very important to find that balance, right?
I have another question. So there are usually a lot of academic
competitive candidate applying for grants and award, but there is like a very limited quota. So what do you think are the one or two outstanding, like extra outstanding elements that make them having a successful application?
I guess an essential element in a grant application would be novelty, right? And how unique it is that you are capable of doing that, or you're the few ones that can complete this project, right? And I think if you're able to communicate that and show that you have the expertise or the platforms or is unique in this proposal, then I think it will definitely be funded. If it's a very, if it's something that, you don't have track record in, or you don't, something that, it's just an incremental knowledge increase, probably have a slighter chance.
Yeah, I think what Stephanie said is the most important parts for getting a grants. In addition to that, when you have all these, just on top is like the side dish, you need good writing. So how you communicate with the reviewer, because you won't be able to see him or her face to face and then let her know that you know what's good. So there are some they say grant writing skills that you might also can learn a little bit, or how you present your figures in a way to make it clear to not just the expert in the field, but also they are expert in a related or in science, but not specifically on your topic. So you shall be able to communicate with them to make it clear as well.
I want to follow up on Jamie's question. So, for example, sometimes when we apply for some prestigious grant like the Crowdtrade Innovative Award, there are some institutional quota. Like the CIA, there's only 3 quota. And for example, I tried 3 years already, but didn't get selected internally. So I guess my question is when we haven't reached that stage of undergoing peer review, how do we get through this internal kind of barrier?
So again, strengthen on your what you are doing. So it's always you just try to do the best of what you can, and then of course, as usual, there are some there are factors we can control. So
It's hard because this is a system. It's nothing that you can control. All you can control is build more of what you have and try again.
I think I've got a more personal question. How do you two actually maintain work-life balance, and how do you relieve your stress?
You're more busy. You can go ahead. You have more things to balance.
Yeah, I have a family with 2 children, so they are still in primary school, so quite young. So have to help them a little bit with the homework and sometimes with their midterms, which both of them, they have that recently. So I try to, usually I try to start. I'm a morning person, so I start work early. Also, after I drop them off at school, so I sort of get some quiet time before the office staff or the emails and everything comes in. With the family, sometimes it's difficult to work for after hours. I try to not work too late, but there are some days with the grant writing deadlines and things, they just coming and not much under my control, but I try to do that. I keep exercising, to do exercise daily. I think that's important. That's my way of relieving stress, and also I feel energized, in a way, and also sometimes some other activities that I would do.
I don't have as many things to juggle in my life. I'm married, but I don't have kids, and my husband also works in a related field, so we talk about work as well at home. But it's good because he understands, or we understand each other on what we do, right? And we can also help each other, right, when need be. I find a lot of joy when playing with my poodle. He's 3 years old, and it's so happy when you go home and see him, just so crazy, and I like to relax and bring him to the park for walks on the weekends and just chilling and sort of take my mind off of work a little bit for a few hours, and I think I do agree that it's very important to find that balance and find a way that can de-stress yourself, right? And I think it's different from everyone. Exercising, it can be hiking, it can be anything, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I just have this very stupid question, just like about writing grants. To write a grant, we need preliminary findings. To have preliminary findings, we need money. So grant come first or preliminary findings come first? Just like whether chicken come first or egg come first.
That's right.
Yeah, because for us, we already have been running the labs for a while.
Yeah.
So we always prepare ahead. So, and we got different kinds of money in supporting it. Of course, there are some seed funding for running the experiments, like the needed experiments for a bigger grants, but a lot of the time, like things are ongoing. And sometimes for grants, actually the new projects stem from a current one or a previous one that we have work and get some interesting data. So yeah, a bit difficult, but I think at the beginning when you start your career, you have to but nowadays you got startup funds, a lot of them, or some of the seed fund that you can get to sort of get you started to get some preliminary data for your first project.
Thank you for answering my stupid question. It's almost brings to physiology. Sorry.
No question is stupid. It's really good.
Philosophy. Sorry.
Any more questions? If not, I've been signaled that we're coming close to the end for our roundtable discussion. And I really like to thank everyone for joining us today. And, I hope, we sort of, learn from each other a little bit. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.